Hi everyone, thank you for those of you who are joining us. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes as it's just turned 6:30, just to make sure that everybody is logged in for tonight's session. I'm really excited about what we have in store, so we're just going to wait a couple of minutes whilst everybody gets tuned in. If you want to grab yourself a drink, get yourself comfortable, just to let you all know that this session as well is being recorded. So if you do have to miss any of it, or if you would like to send it on to some of your colleagues or friends afterwards, just send us a message. We can get the video across to you, no problem. So like I said, we'll be starting at about 6:32. So just give everyone a couple of minutes to get logged in for the event. Hi to everybody that has joined us. Thank you so much for being part of Leeds Code's first event. Just wait another minute whilst we get logged in. As I mentioned, this is all being recorded, so if you would like the stream afterwards, please let me know and I'll get that sent across to you. Cool. So first off, my name is Alice Chance, and I am the careers coach at Leeds and Manchester Codes. Leeds Codes is brand new to Leeds City Centre, but we have been in Manchester for the past 4 years. And what we offer is a 24-week part-time coding school. And what makes us so special is that we fit our course around people's full-time lives. So you can continue your full job of learning with us. And yeah, it's a great course if you want to become a software engineer. We have some amazing tutors who are obviously today. We have one of our students, and yeah, got a really great line of people that are going to be joining us. So we have our next cohort starting on the 24th of May. And like I said, it's 24 weeks, so you can finish this year as a software engineer. We're currently running a spring deal as well as our current diversity grant as well, which is also offered. So tonight is going to be the first of many events for Leeds Codes, and we've got a wicked lineup. We're going to have an evening of storytelling with 4 different developers, and we've also partnered with Wild, and we have the co-owner Sarah Tulip, who's going to be speaking to you now. And she's going to give you an introduction into Wild and all things about Leeds Digital.
Thank you, Alice. I'm not sure. I know that you were breaking up a little bit there, just so you know. So you might want to say some of that again, but I'm hoping you can hear me. So if you're listening now and you can hear me clearly, let me know, because I hope that you can. So yeah, hi, I'm Sarah Tulip. Fantastic. You can hear me. So I'm Sarah Tulip. I'm head of digital transformation for an organisation called BGSS in Leeds. But I wear a couple of other hats. So one of which is the digital ambassador for the city. So, you know, very much behind the future of it and our digital ecosystem. But I also found an organisation called Wild 3 years ago. And I co-founded that with a friend of mine, Deborah Hetherington. And it's a Northern Community Initiative. So there's no ownership because we don't make any money. But what we do is really highlight activity that supports minority groups within tech and digital. So we do a variety of things, and co-sponsoring and supporting events is one of the things that we really like to do. So if anybody's doing, you know, anything in the ecosystem and wants support, we would love to do that with you. We are really excited to welcome Leeds Codes to the city. It's fantastic to have a part-time coding course, because we know that, you know, so many people really can't, you know, change their careers when they've got a full-time job. So it's exciting to know that we're going to hopefully see more diversity into the tech and digital industry. And also with regards to Wild, we've got a couple of things coming up. One is which we're doing a big paper on diversity in tech and digital at the moment. So that's going to be going on over the next few months. So we hope that everybody in the city takes part. And we're also going to be having our annual conference in October. So if there's anything before then that you want to get involved in or you want us to support, please reach out. But today we are really happy to support Manchester, there are the brand, Leeds Codes in the city, and I'm really looking forward to this event. It looks amazing. Well done for putting this together, and glad to be part of it.
Hi, I think I may have broken up a little bit, so we'll try again from what I tried to say earlier. So Leeds Codes is the first part-time coding school to enter Leeds. And what's so great about us, like Sarah said, is that our course has been created to fit around people's full-time lives. And we have loads of different people who can do our course because of this. And we run sessions twice a week, as well as a Saturday drop-in. And our next cohort is due to start on the 24th of May. We have a spring deal on this, as well as our diversity grant. So if anybody is interested in getting involved, we have links to our website. You can have a look at our prospectus, or if you would like to speak to any of us individually, please let us know. So we've got a great lineup of speakers today. We've got Quinn, we've got Maria, Dom, and we've got Aisha. And I'm going to pass you over now to Quinn, who is going to tell you their story about how they got into software engineering.
Hi everyone, I'm Quinn. My pronouns are they and them. And yeah, thank you for inviting me. How did I get into software engineering? Well, I guess I've always known since I was very little that I wanted to be a software developer. My first computer was an Amstrad CPC, 1987, and I started programming then, just typing in things out of magazines. Not something that people do very much these days anymore. And then I did go to university. I was one of the last people to study theoretical computer science at Manchester University. And I'd say people are worried about whether they need a degree or not to get into computer science. And I'd say that a university degree might give you a year's head start on your career. For me, I learned more in the first three months on the job than I did in all 3 years at university. So there's good and there's bad to it. And I think I work with loads of great people who are career changers, or they didn't study computer science at university, and it doesn't hold people back in their careers at all. I worked for a string of different tech companies. I started out as a Perl head working for a spin-off of Manchester University, and we were doing DevOps. It wasn't called DevOps back then in 2003, but that's what we were doing. We were building technology to support developers and to run testing on what was at the time virtual CPUs. So that was building code that could run any code, so that you can imagine it's quite hard to test, especially back then when there was no DevOps out there. And then eventually sort of worked my way into working for Trend Micro, which is a multinational security firm based out of Taiwan. And that was a really great company. It was really great people to work with, but it wasn't right for me. I was too far away from the customers, and I was too far away from the way that the products were being designed. When I found out that they'd made a product that was allowing parents to block LGBT content on their kids' computers, that was definitely the end of my my time there. So that was when I went off and started my own business, Fish Percolator, which I still work at 1 day a week. That was a really exciting thing, but running your own software development consultancy is definitely a love, not money kind of situation. There's a lot of not coding work involved in chasing clients and doing invoices and doing corporation tax returns and all that kind of stuff. But I learned more about software development and full stack software development in 5 years at Fish Percolator than I could have ever done working for someone else, because I just had to. There was no other option. I had to do every single role. And then while I was there, because I was working on my own, it gave me the opportunity to actually explore more about myself. And that's when I realized that I was transgender and non-binary. And working for myself gave me the opportunity to come out at my own speed, to change my name, to give all my clients the right information to get them to understand who I was and start using the right pronouns for me and things. But when I found that my business wasn't sustainable in the long term and I had to go back into the workforce, I was pretty scared about finding jobs that were friendly to trans people and had the right attitudes towards trans people. In every job I interviewed, I asked them about their EDI policies and about what it is that they're doing to support trans people and any other kind of marginalized groups within their organizations. And I've got to say, like, most of them were not great, but I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to interview for a job at Citizens Advice, which is an absolutely amazing employer. And I'm really, really happy to be working there 4 days a week now as the technical lead on their content platform team. And that is an amazing employer when it comes to things like trans friendliness. I haven't had a person get my pronouns wrong at work for months, which is amazing. Like everywhere else, people get my pronouns wrong every day. I was also asked to talk about tips for getting into the industry. I'd say keep learning and keep following your heart. Like, keep looking for the things that interest you, but also keep an eye on new technologies and new things that are coming along, and make sure you learn a little bit about them to find out if they do interest you. Don't specialize too much in one area, but do specialize a little bit in the things that you're fascinated by, and learn which of those skills are transferable, because a lot of people will fill a CV with like, oh, I've got all this Python experience, without realizing that Python and Ruby and Perl and to some extent Java, even JavaScript, like they're all really interchangeable. And like you might say, oh, I know React, but that might mean also that you actually would be able to learn Vue in a snap, because they're basically the same in a lot of ways. And when applying for jobs, I'd say it's really important to be yourself. Like, sometimes careers advisors will tell you, oh, you should try to be what it is that the employer wants you to be, rather than who you actually are. And I'd say, like, you'll just end up working for an employer that you don't want to work for, and there's a lot of those out there. If you can't be yourself in the interview, then you won't be able to be yourself at work, so it's probably not the right job for you. And don't care too much about authority. Like, it's really good to just tell people who are above you in the chain that they're wrong. I find, like, it's got me very far, just constantly telling people, not nicely, but telling people that they that you have another idea about how they could do something. Sell yourself on your CV. So many CVs I see now when I'm getting candidates for interview, where people are just listing their responsibilities that they had in the jobs that they did, and not talking about what it was that made them great at the job. And even when they do, they downplay it. Like, they'll put extra words in, making it sound like they were less good at their job than they actually were. Just like, I love seeing CVs where people really just talk about the things that made them great and what made them stand out at work, and the praise that they got for the things that they did. And then the big one for me is stick with it, because there's loads and loads of people looking for work early on in their careers. But if you're good, it won't take long before you get past that point where there's a lot of people looking for work and there's not all that many jobs out there, to the point where, like, I find we're at now at Citizens Advice, where whenever we need someone senior, there's no one there. Like, because actually the job market becomes a lot less competitive once you've been in the industry for a little while. So I'd say stick with it, move around jobs a bit in the beginning, get some experience in a few different places, and then you'll find that the market just opens itself up for you. At least that's my experience, and that was a big surprise for me coming into it later, being out as trans, because when I thought I was a man, like obviously opportunities they present themselves in a different way, and I was worried that going in as a trans person that those opportunities wouldn't be available. But I think if you can find the company where people look for the places where people like you work, you'll find that those some of those barriers fall down if you can sell yourself in the right way. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to talk about is name.pn, which is a project that I've built at Fish Percolator by myself, and that's been a really great experience, building a product just for myself, not just for myself, but building a product without a client. It's a place anyone can sign up to it, and you get a page where you can just show people how your name is pronounced, show people how you would like people to address you, show people what your pronouns are, and you can put it in your email signature. And it's quite a simple little thing, but it's been so fun and so nice to stay on top of technologies, because when I learn a new thing, I can integrate it into name.pn first without having to worry about interfering with anyone else's work. So having side projects and hobbies, especially if they're real passions of yours, I've also found is a great thing. Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Quinn. That was a really good introduction from yourself. Next up, we have speaking is Maria, who is actually one of our tutors at Manchester and Leeds Clothes. She's also an associate client-side developer at The Guardian. So Maria, if you'd like to tell us your story about how you got into software engineering.
Sure, thank you, Alice. Hello, everyone. I'm Maria, but thanks again for the great intro, Alice. How I got into software engineering. So I have a slightly different kind of path to Quinn. I might say the start was in primary school when we got the brand spanking new, at the time, Apple iMac computers that came in all different colors and were too big to fit on the desk. But yeah, everyone was angling for some computer time. I will fast forward a little bit because, disclaimer, I did a boot camp, so didn't study computer science kind of throughout my education. But yeah, if I fast forward a bit to uni, while studying another subject, I kind of found myself joining quite a few coding clubs. So I joined a few that were like uni related, as well as kind of in the city. I was in city related. I was in Nottingham at the time. Yeah, and found that I was devoting a lot of time, I won't say more time than to my actual course, but a lot of time to coding. It was enjoyable. And as you can imagine, I had second thoughts on what I'd studied, but, powered through. I'd also say that up until that point, coding kind of had been a hobby for me, something that I'd pick up and put down. But when I joined these clubs, for want of a better word, they kind of definitely helped build my confidence and knowledge. But I'd say something that was a bit of a turning point was helping me set up my own dev environment. So as a hobbyist, whenever I would do a bit of coding, I'd use like an online resource. But once I kind of figured out how to build something from scratch, use my own terminal to build something, or my own IDE, so integrated development environment, basically where you write your code. Yeah, that was definitely a turning point for me. So yeah, post-uni, found a job kind of more related to my degree subject, but made the decision that I would like to be a software developer full-time. And then having made that decision, the question was how I was going to go about that exactly. So there was lots of scouring the internet, trying to find the sort of things that I'd need to know, so knowledge paths, etc., like hard skills, soft skills. There was lots of asking people I'd met along my journey, like people who would also go to the odd meetup group or the workshop that I'd go to. And I settled on doing a boot camp. And yeah, I kind of went full speed ahead. More on that in just a moment. But my bootcamp had quite rigorous prerequisites. So that pretty much that entailed creating your own little microsite, which also kind of doubled up as your introduction. Doing a certain level of logic-based coding challenges, so like coding katas, as well as some more UI-focused coding challenges. And that was quite intense because I had not given myself the recommended allotted time. Just, you know, thought I could power through and get it done in half the recommended time. But I would also say the silver lining to taking that tack was full on immersion. I would, if I had half an hour before work, I'd do a bit of coding or try and knock out a couple of challenges. I would go I'd go to like the meetup groups. Typically a lot of them would be bring a computer, what you're working on, and then this is allotted time, 2 or 3 hours, depending on how long you stay. You just get on with it. In fact, the one that I'm thinking of, the title of the event was Get On With It. But yeah, and I also remember, so I'd have quite a few apps on my phone, just like time wasty things, maybe social media, maybe some games. I got rid of those and instead downloaded coding apps. And if I had a spare couple of minutes or if I was on the train, I'd again try and do a couple of challenges to build my knowledge. And yeah, I think that was again an intense period of time, but instrumental in earning a place on the bootcamp. As you can imagine, if you're a prospective student or if you've heard anything from other students, being on a bootcamp can have its highs and lows. Occasionally can be an emotional roller coaster. Maybe you feel like sometimes you're bashing your head up against a brick wall, but then you have kind of a moment of epiphany, and for me, it made it all worth it. And yeah, so after I finished my bootcamp, well, I graduated from my bootcamp right when COVID was kicking off, unfortunately. So that made maybe next steps a little bit more difficult, like trying to find a job. But I was somebody who was quite fortunate to find some freelancing work, which tied me over until I found what felt like, or what kind of was my first official software developer role. I joined a think tank in London called Demos, and the way that software development was integrated into the organization, which was very much like the typical think tank, with 70-page reports and project-based, well, yeah, just everything was pretty much project-based. But they wanted to kind of, I suppose, well, the term that I've got in my head, I'm going to quote somebody else, and it was get with the times. And so to accompany the traditional 70-page reports, they wanted something that could be a bit more interactive. So whether that would be building microsites or, a microsite that would house something where that was interactive. So interactive charts where you could like drill into the data, sorry. That was great. They had great clients. So I was working with like quite a lot of big charities or big names. I found myself working with quite a few banks actually. But yeah, from the software development aspect, it was great because I pretty much had complete leeway on what I chose to as the tool for the job. It was very much a best tool for the job kind of thing. So I got to learn some Python and some of their popular libraries like Pandas and NumPy, and then front-end development like JavaScript and React, and just decided one time that I'd like to do a mini project in Vue. yeah, so that was Demos. And then a few months ago, I had my most recent position with The Guardian. And there I'm more front end. So with Demos, I was full stack, but with The Guardian, I'm more front end. But yeah, that's all going well so far. Not too sure if I'm running over a little bit, but I'll leave it there. And also open to any questions.
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for that. It was so great to hear about your journey and really good to hear about somebody that did one of the boot camps. So thank you very, very much. Coming up next, we have Dom. She is a software engineer at Sky, and she's also one of our instructors at Leeds Codes and Manchester Codes.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I was just waiting for the screen to zoom in.
Yeah, to separate themselves. I know. Okay. Thanks,
Dom. It's kind of like
Dom.
waiting for the cues. Thank you very much for the introduction, Alice. So unlike the sort of previous speakers, I haven't known that I wanted to be a software developer for a very long time. As a matter of fact, I didn't know I wanted to be a software developer at all. When I finished school, I did law at A levels, and I did quite well in that. So I thought, well, I guess I'll just go to uni and do law. So then I did that. I actually went to Bradford Uni, so not too far away. After I graduated, I kind of just went with the career path. So I graduated with law, thought, well, I'm going to have to be a lawyer. It's kind of what the only option really. So I got a job in Leeds, worked for a couple of firms, qualified as a chartered legal executive. Worked in that role for a couple of years. If there are any lawyers listening, they'll know how difficult the path actually is and how long it takes. So I think overall, including university, took me just short of 10 years to qualify and get the experience. So yeah, quite a long journey. But now here I am, a software engineer, which is a big change. And the only reason really that I changed careers, or the only reason that even occurred to me change careers, is my brother is a software developer, and one of our little family gatherings, we were talking about our jobs, and he sort of complained how difficult his job is, and I was overworked, overstressed, wasn't enjoying my job at the time, and I've just said, well, your job can't be that hard because you're on a family WhatsApp all the time, so clearly it's not that bad. So I've decided to learn to code, just to really show my brother how it wasn't hard. So that's how we really started, or that's where the idea of learning to code came from. So at the time, I wasn't even thinking about changing careers. I just really wanted to show off my brother. But, you know, that's usually where all the great stories begin. So I didn't really know then what to do and how to learn. So here comes Google, which actually hasn't changed because as developers, we do use Google all the time. So I found some online resources and I thought, well, let's just give it a go. So I found Free Code Camp. If anyone has tried to learn, it's one of the sort of top resources that comes up. And I learned a bit of HTML, a bit of CSS, started on JavaScript. But before I knew it, I was actually doing a little bit every night. So I'd come home from work and I'd just be like, oh, maybe just a little bit of code, just try and get this a bit further or make this work and solve this issue. And I really got into it. And that's where it occurred to me that maybe actually I should be doing coding as a job rather than spend a whole day in a job that I wasn't massively enjoying, that I felt like I was going through the motions. And I was actually looking forward to coming home and writing code. And that's where it came the next challenge. So, all right, I knew that I wanted to code for living, but I've only really done a little bit. And, you know, I came from a career in law, which took a very long time to get into. It's heavily regulated. So it was just seemed like a really daunting idea. Luckily for me, my brother also happened to work for Sky a few years back, and he's recommended a part-time bootcamp that Sky were running to increase diversity within their department. So it was open to women, and it was part-time, which meant that I didn't have to take any time off work. The only downside was I live in Birmingham at the moment, and I was living in Birmingham when I started the bootcamp. The bootcamp was in London, so that was a real pain. And so once a week, I had to drive down to London to do my 3 hours session and then drive back. It's crazy, but I really wanted to do it, so I've decided to go all in. I then spent pretty much most of the week trying to work on the projects that were set within those sessions and really polishing my skills. Once I finished the bootcamp, I had the opportunity to apply for a role in Sky. It's one of those that isn't guaranteed, so I was lucky enough to get a job. Great. So that's how I made my my switch between the careers. I managed to secure that job. I think altogether it took me about 6 months, but it was definitely quite a big commitment, both time-wise and also just energy. I think I just did not have any social life whatsoever. But hey, I showed my brother. So I just want to talk maybe a little bit more about some of the challenges that I've experienced. Like I said, that there was the time commitment, there was the energy, but there were some other things as well. When you're a woman working in tech, it can seem like an absolutely daunting world. And one way that I tried to gain a bit more confidence is going to local meetups. And I remember before my first meetup that I went to, it was this meetup called Open Code, and it was a little bit like what the one Maria mentioned. They get on with it. You sort of come in, you just bring your laptop and you work away, or if you want to have a chat with other people, that's fine as well. So it's kind of a bit social, bit just do your work kind of thing. And I remember before I went to my first meetup, I was so scared. All I was thinking is, I'm going to show up. I don't really know a lot, and all these people are just going to look at me and think, "What are you doing here? You're not a proper coder." Turns out, actually, when I went, it was an incredibly welcoming atmosphere. The people I met were great. I actually ended up going to that meetup as much as I could, and obviously then COVID happened, so that sort of stopped a lot of these meetups. But definitely, what I realized is that getting just that little bit outside of your comfort zone really helps you achieve the next step. So when I started my role at Sky, I had a very similar feeling. I was starting on a graduate scheme. Well, I wasn't a graduate, and other people were. I just did the boot camp, which was quite short, and I studied part-time. There are people that spend 3 years learning all these concepts. Am I really going to be good enough? But then I remembered how I felt before going to the meetup, and I thought, no, I just need to be a little bit outside of my comfort zone, spend a little bit of time just catching up if there's something that I'm missing. But overall, I wouldn't be given that job if the recruiters didn't think I was good enough. And that's kind of what keeps me going. And you will find if you do end up working in tech, but yeah, any other role, you work with that imposter syndrome, that little voice in the back of your head that tells you maybe you're just not good enough. Usually it's just a lie, and you've got to get yourself out of that comfort zone, and that's really when the magical things happen and you get to achieve your goals. Well, I think that's pretty much it from me. I would be more than happy to answer some questions afterwards. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Dom. That was very inspirational and really cool that you sort of completely switched careers just to get back at your brother. I wish I had the determination to do that. It would really annoy him. Cool, thank you. So coming up next, we have got Aisha, who is a developer at the moment, and she's currently
at Bentley, and she is an ex-Manchester student. So she's going to tell you all about her journey. Oh, she's just on mute at the moment.
Hello, sorry. And I just said, Alex, I couldn't really
That's
hear
okay.
you.
It's the problem of the year, don't worry. Okay, cool, thanks.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, my name's Aisha and I'm currently a software developer at Bentley. So after finishing my A-levels, I was going to go down the traditional route of university, and I was going to study neuroscience because I'd always been interested in like biology and chemistry and just science in general. But due to personal reasons, I found myself in like an impromptu gap year. So I didn't really know what to do at the time. I was working at McDonald's, which, you know, equipped me in life for some things like being shouted at and not crying, that kind of thing. But I definitely did not want to be there for another year. And that's how I found an internship at Channel 4. So I entered the world of advertising, and this was my first corporate job. And as an 18-year-old, I found myself in such a lively and social industry, and I just thought like, wow, this is definitely like exactly where I want to be. So I kind of worked my way up there, and then 3 years on, I started to feel like I'd hit a bit of a wall in my role, and I couldn't really see myself progressing. And I just found that I wasn't really using my brain as much as I wanted to. Like at that time, all my friends were at university and they were all talking about assignments, and I just thought like, what am I actually doing? I don't really feel like I'm learning anything. So yeah, I found myself really unchallenged, and I could easily just like sit in front of the TV and get my work done. And that is definitely something I wanted to change. So I always got involved in like the digital side of things at work because that's what I always found like most interesting. So when I did start looking for jobs and deciding like I might want to make a move, there were just not many media digital jobs that I really felt quite passionate about. And I kept seeing this software developer thing come up, and I was like, what is this? Like, why are they so in demand? So I had a little look, and it just seemed really interesting. And I knew like as while I was reading, I knew like I definitely wanted to learn some JavaScript. I definitely wanted to learn into coding. I didn't really know anyone who did that kind of thing, so I wasn't really sure who to speak to about that. So in the end, I just started looking for ways I could learn online. So I did do a bit of free code camp, that kind of thing. And then I realised that I kind of wanted something a bit more formal, and I needed that motivation to push me forward, just because at the time my job was quite busy, and the thought of like having to code after work just on free code camp where you're not really seeing the results, I just needed that extra push for motivation. So I came across quite a few boot camps, and when I was searching around, one thing that really stood out for me was the grant that was offered by Manchester Codes for anyone who identified as female. So I did a bit more research into the company, and I found that this boot camp not only would teach me the skills that I wanted to learn, it was teaching like the most like up-to-date kind of web development tools, but it really aligned with my own values. So I found myself, I think it was March 2020 when I first had a little look. So that's when we first went into lockdown, and I thought I'd have loads of time. So I enrolled myself and I bit the bullet, and I went into the July cohort. If I'm being honest, I did find it quite overwhelming at first. I went from sitting in front of the TV, not really focusing, to having to take in loads of new information and learn so many things that I'd just not known about. And it definitely was a roller coaster. Like Maria said, like there's highs and lows, and there were some points where I was just learning, and I was like, how are people getting this? I still don't understand this. But the tutors were really nice, and I could just speak to them, and we had like a Saturday session that I could drop into as well. So that was really helpful. As the weeks went on, I kind of got used to that feeling of not really knowing much, but you kind of just managed to stumble through. And once these like eureka moments started popping up, You know, it was such an amazing feeling, and I think it was maybe like 3 months in when I was like, actually, I think I might have some skill for this. So with the skills that I did get from the boot camp, I finished in January 2021. I managed to secure my first job at Bentley, and I'm really just enjoying being in the industry. It's quite a change from media, so yeah, definitely some getting used to. I think I did have a few wobbly moments at the beginning, just because I did kind of feel a bit out of place. Bentley, as you might imagine, is quite a white male dominated company, and I did actually speak to the tutors before this, and I thought, like, I don't know if I'm going to really fit in there, but you know, they give me that motivation, they give me that push to like go in there and be that change that you want to see. Even when I got to the role, when I just needed a chat with someone, because I don't really know many others that are in software development, I could speak to Kirsty, who works at Manchester Codes, and she helped me through that. And it's just nice to know that even after I finished the boot camp and I'm in like my first like role, Manchester Codes is still there, like as support and as a community. So yeah, that's me now.
Thank you so much. That was a really great introduction. I'm so glad that you enjoyed your time at Manchester Codes. So now we have got to the part of the evening where we have a bit of question and answer. So we have some pre-submitted questions, which we'll be going through. But if anyone does have any questions that they would like to ask any of the speakers tonight, please let me know. Pop a comment. Feel free to send those through and I'll start working through these questions. So on the pre-submitted questions that we got through from attendees, what was the best piece of advice that you were given as you started your career as a software engineer? I don't know if anybody got to that one. If you'd like to raise your hand.
I don't mind. Oh, we'll both do it. No, well, I will ask you for your opinion right after Quinn. But this might be a bit of a cheat answer, because I'll probably give more than one piece of advice. But so I'd say don't try to remember everything. Like, don't try to literally memorize stuff. And your GitHub is your portfolio, and you'll learn on the job. What do you reckon, Quinn?
Oh yeah, your GitHub is your portfolio. I totally forgot that one, but I totally agree with you, Maria. That might be the best piece of advice. But the one that I always repeat is the someone once told me, on your CV, don't say what it is that you were told to do in each job, but tell people what you actually did, what you achieved, what made you different from the other people who were hired to do that role. And ever since I've done that, like, I put loads of my personality into my CV. I don't hide it from people. I have a line that's been at the bottom of my CV that says I'm not very good at bowling for decades, and it's never failed to get me interviews as far as I know. So I'd say make sure that your CV, when people look at your CV, they know they can see you and your personality and the things that make you different from other people, not what your boss has told you to do. That advice has really helped me throughout my entire career.
Great. I would definitely agree with that. When I'm helping people with their CVs, I always say to make sure they put their personality in it, because they'll see so many of the same CVs every day. Appreciate that my sound might not be working properly, so I apologise for that just in advance. And so another question was, how welcoming was the tech community, and what have you found the best sort of part? What's been the best part of being involved in the tech community?
Right, I'll jump in there. So working for a larger organisation at Sky, there is a lot of different people, and Sky are really committed to being diverse. So I found that I was able to fit in really well. Actually, despite being one of the only 2 female developers in my department, I have never felt out of place. I've never felt left out. I've never had a comment, and anything like that, even down to sort of making sure that people use the inclusive terms for groups, despite me just being the only female there, just like, hey guys. But yeah, so from my experience, I have felt very welcome, and I talked about the one of the meetups that I went to, well, my favorite meetups. I have actually been to other ones, but I've always felt that that my presence was welcome there, and especially at the start, I had about millions of questions. Every time I found someone that worked within the area that I was interested in or was working on currently, I was like, hey, can I ask you just this one question, please? Just like, I'm a bit stuck on this method and it needs to do that thing. And this person would just help out just without even expecting anything, just be like, yeah, sure. And that's pretty much my experience. So welcoming, and people are always happy to help and answer questions.
I've got a little bit of this as well, because I can't wait to go to my first physical meetup. Like when I first started moving into tech, it's just been lockdown. So I found that the Twitter community has been really welcoming. I remember when I first made my account, I was following about 9 people, and I just thought, this isn't really going to go anywhere. So I just put a tweet out there, like, I want to follow more women, I want to follow more Muslim developers, and it's just grown so much. And I found that I've made like virtual friends, which has been quite nice. And you can just kind of put out there like, I'm struggling with this, and someone is like more than happy to help. And it's not only in Manchester or the Northwest that I've created these like virtual friends and networked. It's all over the world, which has been really, really nice. But yeah, definitely can't wait to go to a physical one. I'm sure it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, tech meetups are really, really good. Even though I've not actually got a technical job, I've found the tech community to be really welcoming. And like you said, the meetups are really good. There's always someone there who's happy to help you as well. So one of the questions which we had pre-submitted was, what tech stacks do you currently work with? Are there any new technologies you would like to work with in the future? If there's anybody who would like to answer this one?
I'm happy to. Okay, I'm a massive fan of Ruby on Rails. I always have been since it was first kind of like a thing that people talked about in like 2009 up to now. And like a lot of other stuff has changed over the years, and a lot of fancy new things have come along, and you can integrate them into Rails fine. But what I love about Rails is that it is old now. You know, like I know 2009 doesn't seem all that long ago, but it really is in the tech world. And it's built up this massive community of people who've all built little bits that you can load in, and because it's all open source, there's a really nice sort of friendly atmosphere when you can get someone's code. It doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, make a little change to it, submit a pull request back to them, and then have a conversation with them, and you meet all these people who are all working in different companies working on the same kinds of things as you. And it's just nice. Ruby has this mantra called Minuswan, which stands for Matt, that's the creator of Ruby, is nice, and so we are nice. And it's that way of thinking permeates the entire Ruby community, and it doesn't feel like every tech stack has the same ethos. And I know that like Rails, there's some, like, if you've been following tech news in the last couple of days, it's not ideal, but every world has its own bad eggs, I suppose.
I'll jump in as well here, if that's all right. Just because I realised after my talk that I actually forgot to talk about what I actually do in my day job. I'm so busy telling you about my sibling rivalry that I just totally forgot about that part. So I work with big data. So I use Scala as the main programming language, and the application that I work on is a data processing platform. So think about all your TV viewing data, so stuff like Now TV recommendations, things like that, where you get all that data and sort of put it into the same format, pass it through to data analysts that then give you their great recommendation, and sort of do a bit of spying and all that. For anyone who's seen Social Dilemma, that kind of thing. But what I would like to learn about a bit more about is machine learning. It's a cool developing thing in software. That's what works out those recommendations and makes predictions. And yeah, I'm really geekily excited about data. So learning how to create models that predict behavior just sounds out of this world and exciting for my part.
Great, thank you, Tom. And what language did you learn when you were first learning at your boot camp then?
I first learned PHP. So I learned JavaScript on my own using Free Code Camp, and then in a boot camp I learned PHP, which I actually haven't used since since the boot camp ended. But as Quinn mentioned before, they are interchangeable. So once you learn one or two, you kind of pick up other ones.
So at Manchester,
Great, thank you.
I learned JavaScript mainly, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And then we also did a bit of backend, which, if I'm being honest, was literally my biggest nightmare. But we did a bit of Express and Node.js. And then we moved on to React, which was, really interesting.
Maybe I'll dip in here as the odd one out. I've probably done a bit of a mix of all of the technologies that everyone's mentioned so far, minus PHP. So in my current role, we primarily work with Scala on the back end. So I did a bit of Python in my last role. I've done a little bit of Ruby in my own personal time. So before I'd really cemented that, the languages were interchangeable, I think I had a slightly different concept, even though this was something that I was told like a fair few times. And so started learning Ruby independently and realized how much of like the core tenets of coding programming is shared across languages. I don't want to go with a cliche metaphor for spoken language, but we're trying to communicate the same things, but in a slightly different way. And if it's code, it's syntax. So I would say if you learn one, then it'd be easier to learn the next.
Great, thank you, guys. I know one thing that lots of people ask me about, particularly about how have the interview processes changed from, say, interviewing for a job that you had before you started in software engineering, or if you could just sort of explain what the interview process is like for a software engineer, because I'm sure people don't know that there's tech tests and there's pre-screening calls and all that sort of thing that people have to look forward to. I don't know if anybody would like to sort of explain their journey with.
I'd be happy to start. I'd say that there is kind of mainly 3 stages to like the interview process being a software developer. I'd say these are quite broad. I do think maybe they vary, but quite broadly, it might be the first stage might be like a telephone interview or like a shorter chat to kind of get to know you a bit, get to know a bit about your background. If all goes well, then you might do a tech test. So that could be maybe a take-home tech test or a pair programming exercise for a certain amount of time, typically an hour in my experience. And then you'd have what should hopefully be a final interview where that might be similar to the first, but versus 20 minutes, it probably would be around an hour, kind of delving into your experience, the things that you know. That's been my experience of the interview process thus far.
add my thoughts. Tech tests are brutal. Like, some of them are just beyond brutal, and employers, because they just get free, they get your time for free at that point. They can just give you the hardest thing. Like, the worst one was TopTal, which is an agency. They had a tech test that I had to take 2 weeks off work to do. That was wild. And then I never got any work through that agency anyway. But yeah, the tip, I guess, is now that I'm working for an organization that has really good equality, diversity, and inclusion policies, they do competency-based hiring. So that's where you try to take the person's background out of the hiring process and focus on their competencies. And the tip there is that if someone's doing competency-based hiring, if you think that they're that kind of employer, then when they say essential criteria in the job advert, you have to mention every one of those criteria in your application, even if you don't have very much experience of it. Talk about how your skills are transferable, because we are required to reject people who don't mention the essential criteria, even if we think they're good candidates. And so, so do make sure that when a job advert says essential criteria, that you mention those essential criteria in your application, even if you don't have too much experience of them, because otherwise some employers might be forced to reject your application.
For me, when I to be honest, I didn't have many interviews. I am 22, so I feel like I'm still a bit of a baby at the beginning of my career. So the interviews I did have before going into technology they were just more like selling yourself and doing like presentations, which I felt quite comfortable. So when I first found out that you had to do tech tests, some while people were watching you on the other side of the screen, that was really daunting for me. So the first two didn't go very well. I think at one point I was just like, no, I'm completely out of my depth. And after a while you do get a bit used to it, but yeah, it can be quite daunting at times. And if you feel like that they're just too far for what you're applying for, it might just be that it's probably not a great place to work if they are asking you to do so many things that aren't really part of the job that you're applying for. So don't feel like because you can't do that tech test and you can't get through that you're not worthy of applying for any other job at that level, because it might just be an anomaly that you're working on and applying for.
Great, thank you. And we have had a couple of tech tests being brutal. And what I found is they differ from each company, which I think is really confusing as well. So you never really know what you're going to get. And we've had a question in, and it says, are there any myths that are totally untrue about software development now that you're in your role?
I'll jump in. Yes, I mean the most obvious one would be that software developers are just the people that sit on their own with their headphones, although I have headphones on today, just typing away and not talking to anyone and being very antisocial. I actually found the opposite. I don't know whether it's the company I work for or it'd be interested to hear everyone else's experience actually, but we are incredibly collaborative. We work as a team. Quite often we work in pairs, so we carry out what's called pair programming. We have one person does the typing, the other one does sort of the talking, and you have a bit of a chat about the approach. We hold quite a few sessions where we sort of discuss the architecture, the design decisions, and everyone sort of, if you're struggling, you kind of just let people know and people jump in and you have a chat. And when we were back in the office, we just go for a coffee on a break, or have a drink after work as well. So stuff like that I've definitely found that it's quite a social atmosphere, not just outside of work, but also the way you work is very collaborative. There is actually very little of working on your own with your headphones on, although it does happen sometimes, and if that's your preferred ways of working, that you can work in that for part of the project as well.
I wonder if, Dom, some of that has changed since people have started to have a bit more awareness of neurodiversity in the workplace, because the software industry attracts a lot of different types of brains in a way that some other professions maybe don't. And like, the more we're aware of different people's learning styles, different people's social needs, different people's like interests outside of work, and the more we pay attention to that stuff, the better the social atmosphere at work can be, I think. Certainly for me.
So I can answer this question. Not a lot. I kind of scratched the surface with coding, and because there is so much to it, you kind of just feel like you've only hit the surface, like whatever you do. So I learned the basics as much as I could, and I did a bit of like an introduction to coding through Manchester Codes, and I found that that was like enough to help me along the way. How did I manage my time? To be honest, if I'm being honest, it is quite a hard, full-on 6 months, especially if you didn't take a boot camp. I was working full time, so I'd log out of my work laptop at 6, open my laptop again at 6:30, and sit there for another 3 hours. But yeah, you just need to make sure that before you go onto the boot camp, you just need to understand that it can be quite time consuming, and make sure you're passionate about it before you go on, because if you find that you just feel like you're wasting your time and you want your weekends back, it's not really going to work. So I would say do some coding before you go onto a course, just to make sure you really enjoy it, and then when you are spending your weekend coding, it's not going to feel like a chore. It's going to feel like something that you enjoy.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's what someone just said, is life's too short to spend 40+ hours really pretending to be something you're not. Be yourself, and the right organisation will embrace you. And that's completely right. Thank you, Rebecca. That's a very, very nice comment. So I just want to say thank you to the amazing speakers that have joined us this evening. I can't believe it's 7:30 already. I've loved listening to your stories. I'm very sorry about my internet and my sound, and I hope it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to you guys, and also thank you to Sarah from Wild. And if anybody is interested in finding out more about Leeds Codes and Manchester Codes, please feel free to send us a message, check out our website, download our prospectus, find out what we're all about. We'll be more than happy to help you. But yeah, again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and thank you for my lovely speakers who have been absolutely fantastic.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
No, that's
Thank
fine. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.